100 days until the Minnesota Vikings' first regular season game. For today's episode, we're going to be predicting the Minnesota Vikings player stats for the 2022-2023 regular season. Now, doing this is a little bit interesting as we don't totally know what injuries are going to come up. We don't know exactly what this coaching staff's plans is for this offense or defense. And looking at the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of new starters. So it's a little bit unpredictable. However, I'm going to be making my predictions for how I expect this offense and defense to look in this upcoming season and predicting stats for every player. Starting it off with receiving yards, this is a big one, probably the most interesting one, and we're going to start off with first, and receiving yards. Every player who got over 200 receiving yards we're going to include on this list, with obviously the top receiving leader for the Minnesota Vikings and receiving leader for the 2022-2023 season is Justin Jefferson. Now, I know in the show we're not completely optimistic. I'm going to be honest. This is not an optimistic show. If you're looking for me to totally hype up you guys, Vikings in the Super Bowl, you've come to the wrong place. However, we're going to be a little real here. And I believe if I unbiased in predicting a player to get the most receiving yards this upcoming season, it is Justin Jefferson. I have him getting 1,860 receiving yards in this upcoming season. That averages to 109 yards per game. This would put him at fourth all-time single season receiving record and put him at number one in this upcoming season, assuming nobody gets more than 1,860. Now, the reason why I have him at such a high number is, first of all, he's Justin Jefferson. We saw what he could do the last 2 years. What else is there to say? Also, we have Kevin O'Connell calling the plays. If you remember last year, Cooper Kupp had nearly 2,000 receiving yards with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays. Actually, it was Sean McVay calling the plays. Sorry, with Kevin O'Connell as their offensive coordinator and having a say into the offense. Looking at this now with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays, now you have Justin Jefferson, who in my opinion is better than Cooper Kupp. Now you can make him look like it. Now you can put him on the stage and say, this is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now, at least under the age of 25. And we're going to see this into the third year of the NFL, or into the third year of his career. And I'm so excited to watch Justin Jefferson this upcoming season, as I am high expectations for him, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Now, looking at the other wide receivers, Vikings have a lot of talent on this offense. There's no question the Vikings have one of the best offenses in the league, especially when you look at the playmakers on this team. With Adam Thielen, hometown Adam Thielen, I have him not getting 1,000 yards this year. I have him getting 810, which is a below average compared to a majority of his seasons, and this is simply for two reasons. Adam Thielen's getting older, and there's only one football. There's only one football to go around, and when you have players like Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, you really don't expect Adam Thielen to rack up a bunch of receiving yards. That's why I have him at 810, with KJ Osborne following with 765 receiving yards. This would mean KJ Osborne's getting 45 yards per game as a wide receiver 3. While I believe Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and KJ Osborne can all get 1,000+ yard season, I just don't think it's going to happen. When you look at our Vikings offense right now, Justin Jefferson is, or should be, the focal point of this team. We don't need to revolve our offense around the run game anymore. We saw how this did not work the last season or the year before that. As great as Dalvin Cook is, that only works against some defenses. We need to revolve our offense around Justin Jefferson, make him the focal point of this team. He's the captain. He's the leader on this offense now. That's what we have to do. Outside of that, we are stacked. We are stacked when it comes to the playmaking positions. Like I said, there's only one ball. For that reason, I don't believe Adam Thielen or KJ Osborne will get over 1,000 yards, but will have respectful seasons. Also, Thielen does suffer with injuries, so you can add that to the list of reasons as well. Ursuma Junior, this is a questionable one. Ursuma Junior, I have him around 730 receiving yards. Another player who I believe should get more. However, like I say, injuries, we can't expect that he's going to play the full season as well, because he has suffered with injuries every year thus far. And also, he's obviously, when you're looking at this Vikings offense, he doesn't have the talent tree of some of these other players. Also, Dalvin Cook around 238, which is pretty similar to how he's had his receiving yards in the past. Going to rushing yards next. This is a quote. This is gonna get some heat around here, but I have Dalvin Cook only at 1,050 rushing yards, putting him at another 1,000+ yard season. This would be his third or fourth year in a row with over 1,000 yards. Think about Dalvin Cook when you look at him right now. A lot of players with his talent, this is where we typically see them fall off. I believe Dalvin Cook is not going to have a complete Todd Gurley or Le'Veon Bell type season where he goes from first team all pro to worst running back in the league. Pretty much, it's not going to be that much of a falling off, because I believe Dalvin Cook still has a lot left in the tank. I just don't believe he's going to be as utilized on the offense as he was the last few seasons. For that reason, I have Dalvin Cook only at 1,050 rushing yards, which would not mean that he's going to make a Pro Bowl this next year. I assume that he wouldn't make a Pro Bowl off of that, but still, it's a respectful season for a starting running back. I mean, looking at the Rams this last year, Dalvin Cook is a better running back than Kevin O'Connell had the last few seasons with the Rams since Todd Gurley. So looking at Dalvin Cook, I believe he's going to be play an important role on this Vikings offense. He's just not going to be the center point of this Vikings offense that he was in the past. For that reason, I have him at 1,050. Behind him, Alexander Madison with 460 rushing yards, respectfully, because obviously we have to expect Dalvin Cook's going to go down with an injury. For that reason, Alexander Madison is a great player to load up and play. And I believe, I've said it a few times, but I believe by the trade deadline, we should trade away Madison. Kirk Cousins gets a respectful 160 rushing yards for a quarterback that doesn't rush a whole lot. 160 is about average for him. That's less than 10 yards per game, pretty much. Kene Iwangu also racks up a solid 100 rushing yard performance on the second season of his career. I believe this is not what you would want to see. Of course, looking at Dalvin Cook, you want him to have a similar season to the last few seasons. Let's be honest, the Vikings look best when you target Justin Jefferson. Give Jefferson over 10 targets a game and you're winning the game. Just look at the stats this last season or the last 2 seasons with Justin Jefferson. He's got to be the focal point of this team. You can't revolve around the run game anymore. We're not a run-pass offense anymore. We have a lot of talent at the receiving core, and that's what we need to revolve our offense around. Going on to passing yards, this one's pretty easy, but I believe Kirk Cousins is going to have 4,550 passing yards in this upcoming season. That's respectful. 4,550. That's very respectful for Kirk Cousins. I believe he's also going to be amongst the top of passing touchdowns this next year and amongst the top of passing yards this next year, putting him in an MVP conversation. I don't believe he will win MVP, but he will be in the conversation, in my personal opinion, simply because you look at the players that he's throwing to. When you're throwing to a player like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, Ursuma Junior, Dalvin Cook, you should be in the conversation for MVP just about every year. So I'm hoping that does happen this upcoming season. Obviously, we are questionable when you're looking at our offensive line. Disregarding the offensive line, we're going to hope that this pans out in the upcoming season. We'll see how that goes. But Kellen Mond will also have 260 passing yards. I believe he's going to play week 17 when the Vikings have already clinched a playoff berth. Kellen Mond will step in and start one game and also be able to play a little bit during the regular season when the game's already over in the fourth quarter. I'm really excited to see what Kellen Mond can do. I know he looked terrible this last year, but that was his rookie season. Now we get to really see what he can do going into year 2. Justin Jefferson will have 80 passing yards this upcoming season. I believe that Jefferson's going to be utilized as a passer as well. You can just use him however you want to use him. Look at how Cooper Kupp played this last year. Expect Jefferson to top that. Maybe not top his stats, but top his highlight reel, we'll say. And then CJ Ham will have 14 passing yards. I believe CJ Ham's going to be on a trick play and have a 14-yard passing touchdown. Love my hammer time. Going on to touchdowns now, I believe that the Vikings will have, this will be just unlike passing yards where you see it solely given to Justin Jefferson. I believe touchdowns is going to be a lot more spread out amongst players, with Jefferson only having 13 touchdowns this upcoming season. Now, only 13, that's still a lot of touchdowns, but when you have as many receiving yards as 1,800 receiving yards as I expect him to be, 13 is a little bit low for a receiver with that many receiving yards. But outside of that, I believe a touchdowns is going to be distributed a lot more because this is how we've seen Kevin O'Connell run an offense, with Dalvin Cook having 10, which is respectful for a starting running back. Adam Thielen having 10 again. Adam touchdown Thielen back at it. He's great in the red zone. I believe that he will be this upcoming year as well. Ursuma Junior with 8 touchdowns. Again, very respectful for a starting tight end. Ursuma Junior is the largest guy in this Vikings offense, so he should be able to size up against some of these nickelbacks or middle linebackers, whatever he goes up against. Ursuma Junior should be utilized a lot more in the red zone, assuming that he is healthy this upcoming season. Then KJ Osborne with the respectful 5 touchdowns. Now, it's not as much as he had this last year, where he had 7 touchdowns this last year. The only reason why KJ Osborne had 7 touchdowns this last year was because we had to see some injuries with Adam Thielen and also amongst other players on this Vikings offense. But I believe that KJ Osborne going into year 3 should have a respectful 5 touchdowns as a wide receiver 3, with Madison being our backup running back getting 4, respectful again, and Kirk Cousins having 3 rushing or receiving touchdowns this upcoming season. Going on to tackles. Now, this one's Now we're going completely on the other side of the ball, and that's going to defense. And we're going to look at tackles here. This one's going to be debatable. For tackles, I have Lewis Cine getting the most tackles for the Vikings offense, or Vikings defense at 137. Now you might look at this first and say, "Wow, rookie safety getting 137 tackles. That's great, right?" No, that would not be great. The only reason why he's going to have so many tackles, in my opinion, because you look at this Vikings defense right now. If you're an opposing offensive coordinator, how are you going to game plan against this Vikings defense? How? You're going to run a lot of go routes. You're going to have the ball around the safeties, around our two deep, a lot more than we've seen in the past, because this is typically what you would see going up against this Vikings defense in 2022. Now, again, I just believe the ball's going to be in the secondary a lot for this Vikings team. Let's be honest. I am not as optimistic as a lot of people on our Vikings defense. While I believe we have improved over the last 2 years, where the Vikings have been one of the worst teams, amongst the worst in the league, I still don't see a case where the Vikings can be a good defense going into this next season. I believe they're going to be around middle of the pack, or if not, maybe still amongst one of the worst. We're going to have to wait and see how these corners do look. But I just don't see a case where the Vikings can be in competition for one of the best defenses this next year. A completely different story than we've seen in the past, and I just don't believe it's going to happen. For that reason, I have Lewis Cine and Harrison Smith racking up a lot of tackles because, like I said, the ball's going to be in the secondary a lot for this Vikings team. Lewis Cine getting 137, Harrison Smith getting 129. Outside of that, we're going to have our inside linebackers, Eric Kendricks getting 115. Respectfully, Eric Kendricks is just a beast. In my opinion, he's the best player in this Vikings defense and one of the best on this NFL team, or in the entire NFL league. And then looking at Jordan Hicks getting 80, Chandon Sullivan getting 60. I believe Chandon Sullivan's going to be targeted a lot. Let's be honest. He's gonna be targeted quite a bit, like we saw how Mackenzie Alexander was this last year when he was playing at the nickel position. Patrick Peterson getting 52. Respectfully, Zadaria Smith also getting 50 on top of that. Assuming Zadaria Smith does play. I know he's questionable as of right now. I'm hoping, please, that he can play a full 17 games this next year, because that man is a beast. And now going on to sacks. Sacks is a completely different story, because like every year, the Vikings defense might be bad, but they rack up the sacks. And for some reason, this is where the Vikings seem to always shine, is tackling the quarterback in the backfield. And this is something the Vikings have done great at. But when you're looking at the Vikings defense as a whole, has not been great the last couple seasons. Now, like I said on here, we're going to actually assume that these players are healthy the full season, that being Zadaria Smith and Danielle Hunter, who make one of the best pass rushing duos in the league. I believe if Zadaria Smith plays the full 17 games, which is very unlikely, but I believe if he does, he will rack up 13.5 sacks, which is very respectful for him, and I'm hoping he can be the Z Smith that we saw in the past. Danielle Hunter getting 10, not as good as he was in the past, but still 10 sacks is still great for a starting outside linebacker. No one's going to look at 10 sacks and say, wow, that was a bad season for Danielle Hunter. And then DJ Wanham getting 5 sacks as a rotational guy. And then after Zadaria Smith, Danielle Hunter, and DJ Wanham, who should be our 3 rotational edge rushers on this Vikings defense, Jalen Twyman will actually get 3.5 sacks on this Vikings defense. Now, I don't like the idea of completely releasing Kenny Willekes. I'm going to assume that he does come back onto this Vikings team because he was released with an injury designation. So while I believe that Kenny Willekes was going to actually win the starting role on our Vikings defensive front, Jalen Twyman, I'm fine with him actually winning the starting role. Now, we don't know if this is going to be the case yet. We have to see what he can do, obviously, in training camp and preseason. But as of right now, he's the favorite to win our starting defensive front. And Twyman's going to be a much better pass rusher than Harrison Phillips and Dalvin Tomlinson. Let's be completely honest. Jordan Hicks and Eric Kendricks, our inside linebackers, will both get 2 sacks off of blitzing, and then Dalvin Tomlinson will get 2 sacks because, yeah, Dalvin Tomlinson gets sacks, but they're usually like 1-yard sacks. So we'll see how that can go for Tomlinson. It'll just depend on the opposing centers that he goes up against. Still, I do like this Vikings pass rushing team. When you look at us, on paper, our Vikings pass rush should be great. Our 3-4 looks strong right now. And I do love that. You're just looking at the secondary. You're looking at these corners and saying, well, teams are going to be able to find a way to get the ball into the secondary. For that reason, I have Lewis Cine and Harrison Smith getting a lot of tackles and a lot of interceptions, which is next on this list. I believe Lewis Cine is going to have a tremendous, outstanding rookie season. We already know how great of a tackler and great at jumping routes as he was with Georgia. I believe he's going to bring that talent tree to Minnesota and have a similar play style that he did with Georgia. That meaning interceptions and tackles. I already had him as the leading tackler for the Vikings this upcoming season as a rookie. I believe he's also going to be the leading interception leader for the Vikings this upcoming season as a rookie. With 5 interceptions on our Vikings defense, Harrison Smith not being far behind with 3, Eric Kendricks getting a respectful 3 interceptions as well, Patrick Peterson getting 2, being more than he had last year for the Vikings, which was just 1, and Jordan Hicks also getting 2. So Vikings won't have as many interceptions as maybe we would have saw in the previous Vikings teams. We've seen some good Vikings defenses in the past. Don't get me wrong. Vikings defense has been great in the past. Just looking at the last 2 years, it has not been great for the Vikings. So don't set your expectations too high with this Vikings defense. Like I say, I'm not going to be completely optimistic on the show. I'm going to be real with you guys. This Vikings defense doesn't look like they're going to be one of the best in the league. Now we have to wait and see, but what we can say is that they should be improved from the last couple seasons. I'm really hoping Andrew Booth and Lewis Cine can work as rookies. Those 2 players just stepping up would be a massive improvement on our Vikings defense. And looking at offense, I would set your expectations high. On paper, we have arguably the best offense in all of football. Now with a new play caller on our offense, these players going into year 2, Christian Darrisaw hopefully can stay healthy. Ezra Cleveland looks solid at left guard. Brian O'Neill looks great at right tackle, and don't even get me started on these playmakers because I've already talked about them this entire episode. On paper, you can't look at me in the eyes and tell me that the Vikings should have another bad season mid-season that we've seen in the past. They should have a above average season and make some noise in the playoffs. We just have to wait and see it. So that's my prediction for the Vikings stat leaders for the 2022 season, with obviously highlighted by our core player, focal point of the team, Justin Jefferson. Let me know, Justin.